Welcome everyone to another episode of Vinny Makes the Hall of Fame Case for ... And Vinny, you've given me another interesting one, and another one that I got to I'm going to be able to sit under your learning tree. I did know who this person was because he is a Hall of Famer, or two-time Hall of Famer, Texas Baseball Hall of Fame, and the Houston Astros Hall of Fame, which he was inducted 2 years ago in 2020. So you've got the judge.
Yeah.
Not Aaron Judge.
I do. Literally the judge, also the mayor of Houston, Mr. Mark Hoffheinz himself. Yeah, Roy Hoffheinz is my choice for this episode because, the Super Bowl just finished, and you look at those beautiful stadiums that are created. You think of those, spectacles. You think of what they play on. You think about everything else, and you say, how did that stuff come about? How did all these fantastic, domed arenas, domed stadiums, all these retractable, how did all of this happen? It's because of Roy Hoffheinz. Back when he was, he was the mayor of Houston for a short time, but then after he got out, he decided to make a big interest in promoting sports. So back in the 60s, when the MLB was starting to expand, they decided to award the city of Houston the then Colt 45s. And he decided, I'm going to help create something special. I want to create something that's going to really change the way that people view my city, my team, teams in plural. He didn't own the Oilers, but the Oilers would play there too. My teams, my city, and what he created was the Astrodome, which is called the eighth wonder of the world.
I thought that was Andre the Giant.
Well, I would say there's lots of things that have been called the eighth wonder in the world, but when you're called that title, that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
It's got to be something. The reason as to why I mentioned is because the Astrodome itself, what's also the Astrodome was famous for? AstroTurf. AstroTurf itself debuted in the Astrodome because it was the very first ever venue in the entire world to use artificial turf. And Hoffheinz said that would be the smart thing to do, considering how, you can't exactly do. I understand that artificial turf is something that's seen as pretty controversial with a lot of people. A lot of people don't like artificial turf.
A lot of players don't either, which makes this a bit of a harder case in some ways, because a lot of players, baseball and football, have pretty much been open about their dislike of playing on turf. But I still like where you're going with this because it's a very unique case.
This is what I say about that. Okay. Yes, I'm aware that a bit more injuries happen on artificial turf, but at the same time, what people also need to really realize is that when it comes to these dome stadiums or these retractable roof stadiums, the creation that the Cardinals had with State Farm Stadium didn't come until the mid-2000s. So this was something that they had to do. They had no choice but to do it. It's either that or, you could just say keep it an open air stadium, but that's sometimes not feasibly possible in certain instances. Sometimes you have to have a dome stadium because of the weather, because of the area outside, a whole bunch of reasons. So although I do get the perspective of which artificial turf is viewed as, not as good, at the same time, it was a necessity, and Hoffheinz knew it, and he decided to make it possible, and it worked. The area of Houston in which you had the Astros and the Oilers, plus the the Astro World, which was the Six Flags Park at that same time. Yes, that is where Travis Scott got the album and the infamous festival from. That's where it comes from. It's in the exact same lot.
I'm glad I was gonna make a joke there, but I'm gonna hold back. But anyway, continue.
I would say that, the reason why now you might be saying you're not really mentioning Hoffheinz, you're mentioning the stadium itself. Well, the thing is, like, Hoffheinz is the reason why the stadium exists, and because of that stadium, it really didn't just change, football and baseball. It changed the entire sporting landscape. I mean, Hoffheinz was the reason as to why, like, the Superdome exists. He's the reason why, AT&T Stadium exists. He's the reason as to why, you know, retroactively, along with Rosenblum, the reason why luxury boxes exist. He's the reason why, stadiums have become such an integral part of sports. I mean, stadiums itself are seen as like the backbones. Like whenever you're talking about, meetings with, crowdfunding and everything, oftentimes it's about stadiums. And, the Astrodome itself, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with Hoffheinz, but the Astrodome itself was also something that literally saved people's lives from Katrina. Like the Astrodome itself.
Well, I mean, the Superdome did, but okay, I see the dominoes you're leading to get there.
No, because with Katrina, like any people that were displaced out of New Orleans, they had to go to nearby Houston and live in the Astrodome for a bit.
Now, just to play contrarian, I'm going to say that I think this case would have been a lot easier 25 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, and I think you probably already know exactly where I'm going with this. As a former Torontonian or nearby Torontonian, I grew up near that area. I went to many games at the Sky Dome, now named Rogers Center, I believe. I remember when they built that, and that was the new state-of-the-art stadium. And then within 5 years, it became antiquated because of Camden Yards.
Yes.
And then we're going back to single-purpose stadiums, which I do love going. For the record, I love to go, and I still do. I'd love to go back to another Jays game, but it's so much more fun when the roof is open. Going there for football, it's because the way the sight lines are, it's not great.
Yeah, but it was really one of the first of its kind, those multi-purpose stadiums. Because I remember myself growing up seeing, Dolphins games and seeing Marlins games at the same time. It always did look kind of weird, but that's what it was like at the time. People, even though the case might be a little bit harder, at the same time, people also need to realize that it's also a part of history.
Yeah.
It's also a big part of what a lot of people need to like appreciate and embrace as like, yeah, this happened. It is something it showed the progression of how we viewed and how we consumed and how we played too. It's a huge part of, the history. And I feel like, having, not having Hoffheinz there is just because, the new stadiums are different. Well, different story. It's also based on how things happen over time and, things progress, but he was one of the biggest dominoes. He really was. I mean, any other thoughts that you have on that?
Actually, I just realized as I was talking about the dome, and maybe not the best way, it should beat Exhibition Stadium. What an eyesore that was. A horrible thing. No, I mean, I think this is a really interesting one. I don't see it happening, but state more about why you think maybe the football one, because you're just talking about that step really for the creation of stadiums more than anything else. Because I think
it had more to do with also football. Well, it had more to do with football too, because I would say when it comes to Hoffheinz, it's also with football as well, because it's also where the Oilers really got big. Everyone talking about Bud Adams, but I would probably say Hoffheinz is the bigger contributor from the Oilers / Titans organization that deserves to make it, mostly because of his creation of the Astrodome and how that paved the way for future stadiums in the NFL to have, state-of-the-art facilities as well as, bigger areas. I mean, just look at the Super Bowl that happened in Los Angeles. Notice how, state-of-the-art, next big thing, enclosed areas. I mean, it showed the progression of how we're also going to view the games. And not only that, notice how also the Super Bowl is generally played in those more closed off areas, more of those hot areas.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
I mean, Hoffheinz, again, whether or not he's going to happen or not is irrelevant because I mean, I really, really want him. That's why we have it here. But, I feel like generally with someone like Hoffheinz.
Well, here's a question for you. Why do you think it took the Astros so long to honor him? Like, they've had their Hall of Fame for quite a while. 2020.
Actually, they haven't.
The Astros Hall of Fame?
Nope. It took them a long time for them to do it. It took
am
them until
am I
2019.
confusing that with another team? I am. I'm thinking about retired numbers and such. Okay.
You're thinking about retired numbers. The Astros didn't have their Hall of Fame until 2019. And,
that's right.
Okay.
I'm confusing.
They inducted him the following year. Like, that's the reason why.
Okay. So my apologies. I was thinking
no problem.
I was thinking of a different team. One other interesting thing, though, I think before we sort of like close off. Now, granted, it's on Wikipedia, and I know you do a lot of Wikipedia editing, but as I'm sure you know, sometimes just because it's on Wikipedia doesn't mean it's true. But I found this one fascinating. At one point, he owned the Houston Stars professional soccer team.
Yes, he did.
And what did he do? He actually just used a Brazilian club team to field it.
Hey, you got to make men's meet and feed the people. I mean, he cared about his city. He loved his city.
Yeah,
and
that's fascinating to me.
I mean, Houston. People need to really understand that Houston's not a small market. Houston's a massive market. It's the fourth largest city in the nation based on population. So understand that he was truly changing the way that people view professional sports, especially in the South, when the southernmost team in baseball was the St. Louis Cardinals for a long time. And he made the first ever team South possible. He housed at that point, along with the Dolphins, was the southernmost team in the NFL. He also created a whole culture as a result for the Oilers. And if there was no Roy Hoffheinz, yeah, potentially there could have been another dome stadium later on. But the fact of the matter is, he's the reason why it happened.
Right.
He is the reason why it happened in the first place. And I understand that there's still debates about artificial turf. It's either that or you play on patches of grass everywhere. I mean, and I think you'd rather see a pure, surface as opposed to just like, brown grass. What sounds better to you? Like,
well, I have to admit, I'd probably rather go into some of these elite stadiums to watch my game than, well, I'll put it this way. One week, I in 8 years ago, I saw a game at Ralph Wilson in Buffalo, and a week later in Arizona. It's a bit different in terms
very different.
Of the comfort and whatnot. Having said that, the vibe in Buffalo, it's a very electric vibe. Watching a Bills.
He named them the Astros. He renamed the team the Astros too. They were the Colt 45s. When they moved, renamed them the Astros. Fit perfectly together.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes
why did he
to
do that?
What?
Did you know why he did that? He changed the name to the Astros.
I think when I remember he said it, the reason was because of NASA, because of the spacecraft center that happened in the city. It's because, and when you think of Houston, Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have liftoff. Again, the space center is in Houston. Like when you think of
the
Houston,
space race, then yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Space race. It was all about that. Whereas
I never looked, because I never looked that up. I always wondered, and I guess now I don't have to wonder that anymore, if that was just sort of like part of kind of what the Wizards did when they changed their name from the Bullets, because I think in the climate they would have wound up changing their name anyway.
The reason why they were called Colt 45 is because it was seen as like the one that won the West, and because they were, I think that because they were the westernmost American League team.
Sure, but you know where I'm going with that. I mean, like a bit of that there would be
not American League team. I'm thinking they were one of the westernmost teams, and because the Wild West, Texas.
Well, they wouldn't have been because the Angels.
That's true. The Angels. Yeah. I'm thinking because they're thinking of like Wild West. They're thinking about like the Western theme. That's the reason why the Colt 45s. But then when they moved, they decided to rename themselves as the Astros. It's like the way I also see Roy Hoffheinz, like, is a very, very unique case. And
all of yours are, buddy.
Oh yeah, with him in particular, it's a very unique case because none of this stuff would have happened. This beautiful Super Bowl that saw would not have happened. The way that, the leagues also operate in terms of thinking of stadiums would not have happened because of him. It may not be something that a lot of people really think of outside the area, but people also need to realize that, he was very, very significant, whether or not people want to admit it or not. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm sorry for all the people that, don't like artificial turf. I know Tim Kawakami hates artificial turf so much that it almost feels like he wants to dox the people that create them. But yeah, I'm serious. Like that dude has an obsession against artificial turf. It's unhealthy. But you got to admit, like it or not, he's the reason why it exists. He's the reason why all these innovations have happened in baseball, in football, everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
but the,
because
the
of
the turf thing might be sort of maybe not the one to sort of like propel the most, but the dome thing does have a lot more
oh
value
yeah. I mean,
to
I
it.
would say the dome itself was more significant than the turf. I mean, the turf
Yeah.
I think of as well. I mean, they'll say the human rights, which I don't care about because that's just mainly just used for ways to just say no to someone as opposed to yes. And they say, oh, the moral obligation. No, you just don't like artificial turf.
Well, there is something to that though, man.
Oh, there is artificial.
Yeah,
Well, there is something to it. I agree, but
yeah.
I don't generally kind of like mix on like those ideas.
All right. So we'll have to
But
disagree on
I
that
know
one.
what you're saying. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the dome itself is the main focus. Like the turf is maybe it's secondary, tertiary. The dome itself has such a huge significance for both baseball and football that I believe, at least in one of the halls of fames, he should get the bronze bust or plaque, or either or.
Hmm. Okay. Well, it's altogether possible that he could wind up as a veterans candidate. I don't see it, but it's still a good case, and that's sort of like why you do this. You
Of course.
present things that I wouldn't have thought of. You always usually do, except for Buddy Baker.
That's what I mean. But if we're being honest, I mean, baseball doesn't even have the guy that helped create the first ever. They don't even have someone like Doc Adams in. So
Yeah.
I can't when they don't even have someone like that in, I can't see them putting in someone like Roy Hoffheinz. But as for football, however, I mean, I'm the biggest beater of the drum when it comes to contributors, and
Yes, you are.
he is definitely my most wanted AFL era contributor. That's far enough him or Lloyd AC Wells, but I would probably give more to Hoffheinz because while Lloyd AC Wells is basically the Bill Nunn of the AFL, at the
Mhm.
same time, while one thing changed it for the people, I would say Hoffheinz changed it for the whole world.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for that. I look forward to seeing what you're going to come up with next. I'm not sure if the next show we do, whether I'll still be in Barbados or in Canada, but we will see. But because that move is coming 12 days.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Man, you're gonna be like the first person that goes from like Barbados to Winnipeg.
I probably won't be the first, but I'm in a probably a very select group.
Well, it's like, oh, I'm gonna move to Barbados, Winnipeg. I don't think it was what. Well,
Hockey. I'm thinking of hockey.
well, I would say this: Eugene Melnick does own homes in Barbados, so
Mm.
it,
Oh yeah,
it
that's
is
really going to get
possible.
me aboard as a Sens fan.
Yes, I wanted to throw that out there, guys.
I'll
He
throw it
is
back out.
he's a and also yeah he man like
Hey, it also means, man, Grey Cup this year. It's in Regina. That's a
that always feels so
possibility.
uncomfortable to say.
Regina? Wow, that's due to your youth and immaturity.
Well, it's also my mom's name is Regina as well. My mom's name's Regina.
Okay.
So it kind of feels a little uncomfortable saying it in that regard.
All right. All right. Well,
But it's fine. I'm gonna say Regina.
all right then. And on that note, the show is over. If you haven't checked out our other shows, please do so. Evan Nolan and I, we do the weekly Hall of Fame show. Hey, I wrote a book. Buy my book. Chavo Guerrero, Instant Classic about the late, great Chavo Guerrero Sr. I helped him write it before he passed away untimely, so you can get that on Amazon. Also, Chris Bournet and I, we just did a new show regarding the Beachcombers. We looked at Canadian classics television because
Nice.
we always do. This crap was on national TV, so I said let's do some Canadian national crap. It's actually better than I remembered that show, but I thought it'd be sort of fun to have an American watch that show and give his perspective. Tonight, I'm recording another show for How the Hell Did This Go #1, and we're looking at another Canadian, Terry Jacks, who went #1 with Seasons in the Sun. Awful song about a guy dying, and it's hard to die when all the birds are singing in the sky.
And that sounds depressing as
It
hell.
is depressing. It's a depressing song. I personally hate it, but I think a lot of people really love it. But that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. But like, subscribe, all the things that I'm supposed to tell you to do at the end of a YouTube thing. I'm not really good at that. But hey, do that. Thanks so much and stay safe wherever you might be.
Best of luck, guys, and buy his book.
Thanks.